Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I thought I would do something that I think I'm going to call a lazy river ring because it's going to have kind of a wavy cut through the top of it, and then we'll just put a few stones around it. Uh, but I think it'll be kind of a fun, simple project, so I picked out some pretty garnets to be the stones that go in it, and I'm going to do a little texturing on it to give it some character. So we'll see how it turns out. I think it should be a fun one, but let's get started. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. This particular one has flow temperatures for different solders on the back, so that's useful. Some of the other ones have conversion charts, like from gauge to inches to millimeters, all that kind of stuff that's helpful when you're trying to convert things or measure things. What I really like about these books, though, are the dot matrix pattern in the background. It's not as obtrusive as graph paper, but it gives me some guidelines, so it helps me draw more symmetrical things. And I love having a record of everything I've done over the past 5 years or so. So I can always go back and then revisit things to find out how I did them. Okay, this is today's project. I didn't draw this to scale, really. I just kind of drew the overall design I was thinking of. I have some, it's probably 17, it's somewhere between 17 and 18 gauge sheet that I rolled out from some stuff I cast a while back. And so we'll use that for the band. That's about 1 millimeter, a little bit more than 1 millimeter thick. I picked out 3 different little garnets, cabochons, right here. See if I can get these out of here without sending them across the table and onto the floor somewhere. They're not perfect, they're mostly roundish. But I think this one was about, if I can turn it over. There we go. Small one's about 3 millimeters. The middle-sized one is about 4.5. I think that's this one. It's about 4.75 or 4.85, somewhere there on the millimeter scale. I'm going to make a bezel for each one of these using some 26 gauge fine silver bezel strip, 3/16 inch tall. That's in millimeters. That's 4.76 millimeters tall and 0.41 millimeters thick. So for the bottom, I'm going to use, I thought about doing a little step bezel for these guys, but there's so little surface area that the light can come through anyway. I think I'll use a reflective back on it, like some highly polished silver inside of the bezel. So we'll do closed back bezels with 26 gauge sheet on the back, and that's 0.41 millimeters, like I said. So we'll have to make 3 of those. I'll probably do one on camera, and then I'll do the other 2 off camera so you don't have to watch me repeat myself. I'm not sure how I'm going to do the texture. I'm thinking something linear like that. I have at times used the edge of my chasing hammer like this, and that makes kind of a cool pattern if I do that. So I might try that on a little bit of scrap and see how it looks, if I can get them long and thin. If not, we can do some other things. Well, I have that new rotary tool that I just got. We could try using some burrs and cutting some texture into it to give it an interesting look. I'll think about it though when we're making bezels and stuff, and we'll come up with something. Alright, let me find some bezel here. I think I'm going to cut it a little bit narrower because I keep pretty tall bezel around because sometimes I do some pretty big stones. But this is a bit much for what we're doing here, so I'm going to cut a piece of this and then we'll scribe a line down it to make it a little bit shorter so we don't have to file so much off at the end. I just hung up my new Fordham, so I'm excited to be able to use that. If anybody can tell me which hammer hand piece I need to get for the old CC motors, that particular setup. I think the lady I got it from said this was from the 90s. I don't know which hammer hand piece that would fit that one, so if anybody can help me with that, that would be appreciated. Okay, let's just cut this off. I'm going to do the bigger one because it should be easier to see what I'm doing, I think. And this isn't perfect, but it's close enough. We can file it better once we have our bezels made. What's that saying? Perfection is the enemy of good, I think was what it was. Or something to that effect. I always thought that was a sort of a wise way to look at things. That's usually when I screw things up anyway, is when something's almost just right. Sometimes if you're almost perfect, leaving it be is the best thing to do. I think part of it might be because you're close to finishing something that you really are proud of or feel like it's perfect, or it's going to be perfect. And so you get it done and you look at it and something's just a tiny bit crooked or some scenario like that. And so you go back to fix that and then you melt the whole thing when you're trying to do that. That's kind of what happens to me sometimes when I catch myself being a little bit too much of a perfectionist. It may not always produce perfection, but it calms down my need for that. I usually make bezels into an angular shape when I go to solder them. I find it makes it easy to lay a little piece of solder on the top, and also to get the two ends pushing together really evenly. That's been my experience, not necessarily everybody's, but it's one of those things that if you're new to this, it kind of takes out a couple of things you have to worry about. Like, did I file it to the correct angle for it to meet up nicely, or is it pushing together hard enough? Because it makes it easy to get it pushing together hard enough, which is kind of important when you're doing this. If you want a good solder time. Sometimes when I'm doing this, I don't get a very good angular square, and it's got kind of a slope, and then my little piece of solder keeps sliding up. And that defeats the purpose then, kind of. Oh, by here's my soldering setup if you've not been here before. We're having a bit of a thunderstorm right now. Let's see how close we are. Pretty on the nose, I think, on that one. I'm going to do a little bit more shaping to get it nicer. Sometimes these things, if this is big enough to fit on one of these, no, probably not. But if you had a smaller one, you could use one of those jump ring or bezel manifolds, depending upon what you call them. This is just on the verge of being the right size for this one. I think this, I know this isn't a completely original idea. I've seen other things like it, but I think what made me think of it was a long time ago I had one of my intermediate class people propose and make something kind of like this, and I always liked it. So I think that's where the origin of this video came from. One thing about this one is you could change it up quite a bit. Different stones, different shapes of stones. No stones. One stone. Yeah. Seems like you could have a lot of fun doing different things with it. I thought about using faceted stones for this one, but I think I wanted smooth ones. Not sure why. It just seemed like what I should do. And I just so happened to have these little garnets that were kind of in the size range that I was thinking of. I'll find a little 26 gauge. Usually have a little bit floating around, little scraps and stuff. This one's probably 26. These look more like 22, so they're a little bit thicker. But I don't care that much on this one. It's not going to be a very big piece anyway. So I got a new Fordham, but I need to get a new honeycomb pad here. I seem to have run through all of them. I'm just going to put probably one of those little squares of solder in here, pushed up against the side. It's a pretty small bezel, so, and this is a pretty decent sized piece of solder. I'm going to throw that in there. When you heat this, it's much easier to get the bezel up to soldering temperature than it is the bottom part. So I'm kind of pointing right where the two come together at the base to prevent the top getting too hot before the bottom gets hot enough for the solder to really stick to it. So you will find, if you're new to this, that as you do it for a while, you start to get a sense for where the heat needs to be applied in order to get things to the right temperature when they're supposed to be at the right temperature. So, but it takes a little practice. And then after that, you don't melt nearly as many things as you might be melting at the beginning. That's not to say you don't still melt things now and again. I certainly do. Well, mostly anymore, I can do it without thinking too much, but sometimes a distraction, or if you're really tired or something, you'll not be quite as focused as you want to be when you're doing that detail kind of soldering. Oh, and thanks everybody who gave me advice about my new Fordham. I appreciate it. Alright, I think we're good on that one. So I'm going to do the other two off camera. But in the meantime, should we fish that piece of sheet out and scribe out the thing we need to cut out of it? I say yes. Yes, we should. I measured with a piece of tag board, a little bit thick. It's just kind of compressed cardboard. And because that's thicker like this sheet is, I get a pretty close representation of how long I need to cut it. There's formulas and things you can use for that if you want. Even one of my sketchbook things in my merch store has one of those formulas on it. But more often than not, I'm wrapping it around a mandrel, and I usually overlap them where I want it to be about an 11.5 here. So I add about an extra 1/8 of an inch, which is probably, so that's going to be like 3 millimeters beyond where they go. I had to do some lightning-like mathematics in my head there. I don't know how close I got. Let's cut the end of this off so we got a nice starting place. So I was thinking, and normally if I was making a wideband ring, and I usually make it kind of in a tapered rectangle that is widest at the middle and tapers down a little bit. And then I solder it at the bottom for the most part. But since we're going to have a crack up here on top anyway, it makes more sense to do it the opposite direction, where it's narrower at the bottom, but all one piece and flares outwards to the top. And then we'll solder it up here, and then I'm going to cut that channel like that. You could probably do it without soldering it together, but I'm going to. I think I'll get a better result if I do. And this should get us in the size range anyway. So I go about right here. know this edge probably isn't very straight, but this will get us sort of in the right range. You could use your miter vise jig if you have one of those, if you prefer to do it that way. Okay, so let's find the center of this thing. It's close enough. Alright, so I want to measure in an equal amount from the outside edges here. And it's just a matter of taste as to how far we taper it. So I think we should go, right now it's about 13 millimeters wide or so. So what if we went in 3 millimeters on each side? So like maybe 1, 2, 3, right about there. 1, 2, 3, so right about there. That'll give us a little skinnier band on the bottom, so I think that'll help for a lot of people. A lot of people like that, from my experience. I found that a lot of people have very specific requirements for the type of ring they find comfortable, and it's not always the same for people. Then there's other people who don't care. They just wear it because they think it's cool, and they just don't give a darn whether it hurts or not to wear. I'm just kind of going to the corner from that spot we measured into. That'll give us a pretty good bow tie shape. So let's go saw that out, since it's an inside kind of cut. Let's see if I have any sawing skills tonight. There are days I do and days I don't. I have a 00 on here, which is pretty standard for me. That's pretty sharp. Don't poke your eye out. Okay, let's go clean that up with the file. Okay. File this up a little bit on the edges. Get rid of the tool marks and everything. Most of them. And I did kind of file the top surface to get it pretty uniform and even. But before I do this, I want to see how this looks on a little bit of scrap. So I think that'll be kind of fun. It'll catch some light too. So it'll take a little while to do it evenly, but let's see how it goes. It almost gives an implied motion when you move it in the light. So let's do the other side too and see how it goes. You probably could just leave it kind of taper off in the middle, because from my experience, people who wear rings for a long time, that inner part of the band ends up being pretty smooth anyway after a time, because, well, silver is pretty durable. over time, just rubbing it on things, it'll eventually smooth out that part. So I kind of like that texture. It gives it a little pizzazz. So I'm going to anneal this just a little bit, and I did that right before I did this hammering because I had rolled it through a rolling mill, which made it relatively hard. And if you want to be able to bend it and stuff easily, you want it to be a little bit softer than that, hopefully. And when you pound on stuff, it does that opposite again. It work hards it, so now it's pretty stiff again. So we're going to go ahead and just heat it up to the point where it's a little bit kind of a dull red color. We'll let it cool off for a bit. I overestimated a little bit on the size, so I'm going to take a little bit off. Something else that may have happened too is because I was hitting it with a hammer, it was distorting the metal, and it may have actually stretched it a little bit. Let's see if this gets us closer to where we want to be. This is one of the few times where I don't care that much if I get a good solder joint, because I just want to make sure I don't have a lot of slop overflow. But I'm going to sketch out that kind of wavy path and then cut it out of here anyway, so if I have a little bit of slop, that's okay. I'm still going to solder it from the inside on this one, and then if I need to, I'll focus some heat on the outside after it's already attached to draw some of it into the crack further. So that's generally what I do. Okay. Let's see how we did. Okay, so we got this basic idea. Let's do this. So I'm just trying to scratch a kind of a nice curve like that. It may not be very visible on the camera. Sometimes doing it through some marker like this though helps to make it easier. Okay, so now we can go over there and try and saw that. Let's go do that. I always struggle a little bit with these kind where I have a bottom on it that I have to be careful of. I'll do my best. wavy kind of line. I'll clean that up with the file too. Okay, so there's that first bezel. What we'll be doing is soldering it kind of in the center there. And then those two smaller ones we can center kind of on the very edges, I think, maybe. So I'm going to get those other two made, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I got 3 bezels now, and I think the easiest way to solder them to the top of this thing would be probably to pre-melt some solder. It's called sweat soldering when you do that, to the backs of these. We were out gardening in our backyard earlier, and there's this beautiful big moth that I noticed that at first I thought it was some curled up leaves because it was just sitting on part of our fence, and then I realized it was, you know, camouflage, built-in camouflage. And it was really a beautiful moth. I'll put a picture up here if I got a good picture of him. Maybe I should make a moth. I did make kind of a stylized moth one time a while back. There's a link to that one if you want to see it. You want to heat it till it puddles completely. You don't want a ball of solder there. So you want to have kind of a nice puddle like that. And kind of in the middle. This is the smallest one. I may have to set these on here. So they're going to stick off the edge a little bit. Let's do this. Not sure if this will help or not. I think let's get that soldered on there. We can slide it a little bit if we need to. So we'll get this one, and then which one of these is bigger? This one's bigger. So this is the other end here, and then we can plop the other one in the middle. So let's get that soldered down. Let's let it clean up and we'll see how it looks. That looks really nice. Let's see. We're nearing the end. It's almost 11:30. File these up a little bit. I'll do some final touches with the rotary tool and one of those fine polishing tips probably. But I'm going to put in a little bit of this compressed cardboard just to give it a little bit of a lift. And this is some 26 gauge sheet that I kind of polished up to a high shine in the corner down here. I was just going to cut a little piece to sit on top of that tag board. Just enough to allow some reflectivity of the light coming into the stone. I think that's going to be kind of pretty. That middle one's more of a rhodolite. This one's also kind of a rhodolite. This one's a little redder. These ones are more burgundy or purple. Purplish red, I should say. Okay, so I do this differently than a lot of people. I use my flat side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher. So I can kind of put some pressure and get that top of that bezel kind of curved down over the stone a skosh. If you don't have very strong hands, finding a way to secure this in a ring vise or some other sort of vise might make this easier. Alright, once I have that kind of pushed down, we're going to use the rounded outer part here to burnish with. I'm just going to rub that very top edge. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get that cleaned up a little bit better, but that's kind of, you know, what I had in mind. I think on the next one I might make it a little wider like I drew it, but overall I like that idea. I think it's kind of cool. So I'll get that cleaned up. You tell me what you think. Tell me with some variations you might do if you were to do it. You could make this wider and add more stones, or just do one stone like I said. There's all sorts of possibilities. Do a different kind of texture, or don't do a texture at all. Or have multiple splits going through the ring that are connected by bezels. Who knows? The possibilities are endless. So let me get that cleaned up, and then I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well that was a lazy river ring. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button before you go. And there's also a feature on YouTube now called hyping. If you can hype my video, that helps me out too. But definitely leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And check out my main channel page. I have over 650 videos now, much to my surprise. And I started doing this about 4.5 years ago online, and I've done 3 videos per week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday for most of that whole time. I have quite a bit of content over there, and I think you'll probably find some useful and fun stuff too. So check a few of them out. Make sure to hit the subscribe button before you go too. That kind of stuff really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate all of those. So thank you in advance. I wanted to thank a couple of groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. They not only provide me with some financial help, they have created a lovely environment of artistic people over there who I can ask questions of, and they can ask questions of me, and they can ask questions of each other. It's kind of a nice learning community over there, and I appreciate them making it that way. So thanks, you guys. It's much better than I even had ever anticipated. The other group are my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 28,900, which is awesome. Thank you for that. I get the nicest comments on YouTube, and I wanted to thank you for that. It's really nice to have some regular people who, you know, we talk about different ideas and how you do things and stuff. And I learned so much from you guys, and I do appreciate that. So, you know, feel free to leave a comment. I like the kind of comments that add to my community here, where we all learn something and get better at something. So thank you for that. Thank you also for the financial contributions, like the Buy Me a Coffees or the Super Thanks, buying my merch or my ebooks. All of that stuff makes my channel sustainable, and I do so appreciate that. Thank you for that. The video description down below has some important links. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself a nice design idea sketchbook or some other cool merch. And there's a link to my newest ebook, which is a guide to 2025's tutorials. There's a page for each tutorial I did last year. It has on it a link to the video itself, a picture of the sketch that I drew, a picture of the final outcome of the project, a list of materials it took to make the piece, stone information if there's a stone, difficulty rating, although a little bit subjective on my part probably. And finally, some notes about the project that I thought of after the fact, things I might have learned or done differently, how I might approach the project from a different perspective, what I might have changed, all that kind of stuff. So you get a whole bunch of information and a lot of projects right at your fingertips, and it's a really nice way to support my channel. So thanks for that too. You can even get all 3 of the years I did, 2023, 2024, and 2025 as a package. Look on the merch store for that link, and you save yourself $15 off the top of if you bought them separately. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.